Alrighty, hello and good afternoon now if you're in the Eastern time zone. Otherwise, still good morning, I suppose, if you're in the US. So this hour we will be here with Robert Van Ryzin. And Robert, I'm going to send a couple notifications to your computer asking you to unmute and turn on your video. It should be pretty easy to click on those. If you have problems, we'll address them in a moment. Yep, there they are. We can see them. Good deal. And video. There we go. Alrighty, so audience members, remember that we will be doing a Q&A at the end, so you are welcome to send in questions for that at any time. You'll just click on that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and type them in. We will be waiting until the end to talk about those, so if you send them in early, don't be worried. If we don't answer them right away, we will get there. Otherwise, for this session, we will be talking about the Chicago Coin Club's connection to the famed 1913 Liberty Head nickel. Sounds like a good session. Let's get your camera going here, Robert, and then we should be good to go. Let's see, it should have sent a notification, but I don't see it popping up. So if you could just move your mouse around to the top of your screen so that the Zoom controls pop down. And then there should be a start video button. There is no start video button. That is
no, I don't see one.
We had a video going beforehand, guys. That is a new one. Let's see. What happens when you click on more?
More. Start video. There it is. Okay.
There we go. Alrighty. That was new. Never seen the buttons on Zoom do that. Okay, once that gets loaded. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to hide myself so we can all focus on you. If you have any issues, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be back at the end for the Q&A.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Excuse me. Okay, thank you, and thank you for everyone attending. I first began researching the background of the 1913 Liberty Head nickel many years ago while I was still working for Krause Publications. For odd years, I had bits of information and a lot of speculation. At one point, I must have had 10 or more bound volumes of the American Numismatic Association's The Numismatist on my desk. I searched from the year 1912 into the 1930s, looking at all advertisements and all club meeting reports for anything related to the 1913 Liberty Head nickel. At some point, I came across the summary of the meeting of the Chicago Coin Club on December 30, 1919, and its report that Samuel W. Brown, who has long been thought to be the key figure in the creation and early history of these rarities, was at that meeting, joined the Chicago Coin Club, and exhibited one of the nickels. Since, I've written 2 articles on the topic. The first, which I'm proud to say won the Numismatic Literary Guild's James L. Miller Memorial Award as Best Story of the Year, was in the August 1st, 2017 issue of Numismatic News. And the second, a new two-part article, which this year was awarded the NLG's Best Article in Modern Coin category, was in the September 29th and October 13, 2020 issues of Numismatic News. This talk is based on those articles, both of which, if you are interested, can still be found online at numismaticnews.net. Some basics. 1913 was the year of change from the Liberty Head nickel to the Indian Head nickel. Liberty Head designed by Charles Barber and the Indian Head by James Earl Fraser. No 1913 Liberty Head nickels should have been coined, but 5 were, and now sell for millions of dollars. There are only 3 that remain in public hands. The supposed culprit was Samuel W. Brown, a mint employee at the time of the design change. It has been argued that he took all 5 coins with him when he left the mint's employ in late November 1913. Some researchers say the coinage would have had to occur in late 1912 or early 1913. Otherwise, the dies would have been destroyed in the annual cleanup of old dies. Researcher R.W. Julian places the earliest they could have been coined at December 16, 1912. A recent article in Coin World suggests that John Danrather has found evidence that the coins could have been made all the way through 1913. It has generally been believed that the hobby first learned of the existence of the 1913 Liberty Head nickels through Samuel W. Brown's wanted ads in the Numismatist, and that the first showing of one or more of the coins was at the August 1920 American Numismatic Association convention in Chicago. Not true. Contemporary evidence presented in my 2017 article for Numismatic News shows that more than 8 months prior to the 1920 ANA convention, Brown attended the December 3, 1919 meeting of the Chicago Coin Club, as we will see in the next slide, with one of the coins. Here is the first exhibit of the 1913 Liberty Head nickel, well before the 1920 A&A convention in Chicago. This was hiding in plain sight for many years in the club meeting summaries of the numismatist. This from the February 1920 issue of the numismatist. It relates to the December 3, 1919 10th meeting of the Chicago Coin Club that Samuel W. Brown was in attendance that evening and that he became a member that evening. You can see at the top a portion of that report. Says 10 new members were elected to membership that day. I've underlined Samuel W. Brown of North Tonawanda, New York. Other notables include Virgil Brand, a famous coin dealer from Chicago area, and H.O. Granberg, a famous collector from Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Those two gentlemen were not in attendance that evening. Brown was, and when it came to the exhibit portion of the meeting, he displayed what's listed here, the 1913 Liberty Head nickel. It reads by Mr. S.W. Brown, proof nickel of 1913 of the old type. Proof nickels are not supposed to have been struck during that year. Additional confirmation of that first showing of the 1913 Liberty Head nickel can be found in the July 11, 1934 Chicago Coin Club meeting report that appears in the August 3, 1934 issue of the Numismatist. It reads, the 1913 Liberty Head nickel was discussed, and the story of its first exhibition at a meeting of the Chicago Coin Club was told by several of the older members. I was able to identify 3 of those older members who would have been at both meetings. J. Henry Ripstra, shown here. Ripstra was present when this 1934 meeting was held. Alden Scott Boyer, who was vice president back in 1919, and R.E. Davis, who was secretary for both of these meetings. There were probably others of the older members who remembered seeing the 13 Liberty Head nickel in 1919, but unfortunately there's no list of the 60 members or guests at the 1934 meeting. Oh, sorry. So why did Brown pick Chicago to show up with his nickel? Well, it's most likely because he could have learned in Philadelphia in the 1919 convention that Chicago had been picked for the next convention. The Chicago Coin Club had been formed in February 1919 and began campaigning early for the 1920 convention. Here we see an ad from the July 1919 issue of the Numismatist. It reads, boost for her, root for her, hoot for her, let the West come East, let the East come West, nominate Chicago for the 1920 convention. Most who have written about the 1913 Liberty Head nickel believe that Brown took all 5 coins with him in late 1913 when he quit working for the mint. I do not. These researchers knew of his wanted to buy ads in the Numismatist and his showing of a nickel at the 1920 A&A convention in Chicago, but they didn't know of the December 3, 1919 Chicago Coin Club meeting when they were presenting their theories of what happened. Its mention in the February 1920 issue of the Numismatist has been largely overlooked over the years, possibly because these writers didn't have access to the early 20th century issues of the Numismatist. They also didn't know of this photo showing Brown's visit to the mint in October 1919, and less than 2 months before he showed up in Chicago for the December 3, 1919 meeting with one of the coins. So consider, what if the coins didn't leave the mint in 1919 but waited, as I believe they did, until 1919 to be sprung by Brown or by Brown in conjunction with an accomplice? That would make this image of Samuel Brown on the steps of the Philadelphia Mint very suspect. Again, it's just before his advertisement started appearing in his visit to Chicago Coin Club meeting. This image may be the missing link to when the coins escaped from the mint. The photo was taken on October 6, 1919, following a tour of the mint in which A&A members saw coins being minted and viewed the nation's coin collection. Brown, who was on that tour, was no ordinary visitor. Having been away from the mint for less than 6 years, he certainly still knew people within it. I've not found any other writer who has found this image, and its existence leads to several possible questions and conjectures. Did Brown get one of the nickels then? We now know that he had one shortly after this event. Did he learn of their existence then? Did he make plans to marketing them as a result of this visit? Or did he come to believe that one or more of the coins could be found through placing an ad? Perhaps someone else had one. His very first ad, and he didn't want to miss the ad deadline. The issues of the Numismatist went to press on December 1st, And then they were sent by second-class mail from Maryland on December 5th. So the Chicago Coin Club members at the December 3 meeting were easily the first to have seen the coin. And the October 6th visit to the mint was so close to many places and numismatics, which was had to be submitted, I said, by November 20th. I don't think it can be ignored as merely a coincidence, this picture on the mint steps. As someone else has said, sometimes a coincidence is too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence. I do not know what happened on the visit to the mint or at the convention, and we'll probably never know, but I think it's tied into the history of how the 1913 Liberty Head nickels come onto the marketplace. It makes more sense to me that the coins came out then than the story of us taking all 5 coins with them in 1913 and waiting 7 years to reveal them. Here we are at the 1920 ANA convention, August 23rd through 26th at the Art Institute in Chicago on Michigan Avenue. Convention The host hotel for the 1920 ANA convention was the Hotel Sherman, and it was located at Clark and Randolph Streets and had 757 rooms. An earlier issue, the numismatists had reported that rooms were going quick because there were 5 or 6 conventions in that town at the time, and you should get your reservation early. As you can see, the rates here are very favorable in those days. Singles were $2.50 to $3 without a bath, or $3.50 to $6 with. Doubles were $4 or $5 without a bath, or $10 with. Here we have Samuel W. Brown at the ANA convention on Monday, August 23, 1920, with his nickel. It reads, Samuel W. Brown of North Tonawanda, New York, was present for a short time on Monday. He had with him a specimen of the latest great rarity in U.S. coinage, the nickel of 1913 of the Liberty Head type. It was among the exhibits the remainder of the convention, with a label announcing that it was valued at $600, which amount Mr. Brown announced he is ready to pay for all proof specimens offered to him. An explanation of its rarity is that at the close of 1912, the mint authorities, not having received orders to use the dies of the Buffalo type nickel, at the beginning of 1913, prepared a master die of the Liberty Head type dated 1913, and from this master die, a few pieces, believed to be 5 in proof, were struck. None of these are believed to have been placed in circulation. Following his departure from the convention, Brown left his nickel in the care of Alden Scott Boyer, who by this time is president of the Chicago Coin Club. Fortunately for Brown, the coin was stored at the Masonic Temple Vault in that city and not at Boyer's chemical lab, because that had suffered a robbery on October 18th of some of Boyer's collection. We do not know exactly when Brown asked for his nickel back, but as it's in the January 1921 issue, it had to have been before the end of the year. It reads, Dear Mr. Boyer, I would appreciate it very much if you would return the 1913 Liberty Head nickel. You have either coins in the Masonic Temple Vault in your city. I have a deal pending for the sale of this coin, and it's necessary to have it within the next 10 days. If you will kindly send it by express, charges collect, and estimate the value at $750, thanking you for your courtesy in this matter. This ad is the first time 5-cent Liberty Head coins of this design and year in existence. August Wagner, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This appeared in the December 1923 issue of the Numismatist. I believe it also runs in the January through March issues. Not much is known about Mr. Wagner. I did find some real estate dealings for him, but he's not believed to have been a coin dealer. Q. David Bauer suggests he may have been a front for another Philadelphia dealer, Stephen K. Nagy. Nagy was known at getting some rarities out of the mint. Nagy was also, for what it's worth, the sponsor for Samuel W. Brown. Brown joined the ANA in 1906. I found this strange ad and others like it before I wrote my recent article on the 1913 Liberty nickel, and had to check the year on the newspapers they were in, as it was hard to believe they exist, as they predate by 7 months the 1920 Chicago Convention, where Brown left his nickel on display. All of the ads I found from teenager Harry Kelso ran from late January to early February 1920, which means they were running at the same time as Samuel W. Brown's second ad, offering to pay $600 Arma was a town of just 2,000 people at the time, according to Wikipedia. Kelso then began running ads in nearby Pittsburgh, Kansas Sun. Pittsburgh was a town of 20,000. He had 14 or 2 weeks of insertions there. This one reads, "Watch your change. I will pay $5 to $20 for a 1913 Liberty Head U.S. nickel. No buffaloes wanted. Harry Kelson, Arma, Kansas." It's Kelso, not Kelson. The real question is, how did this kid learn of the 1913 Liberty Head nickel before most anyone else in the nation knew about it? One thing I could think of is possibly that after the 1919 meeting, where there were 18 members and guests, that people talked about the coin, and by the time it made it to Kansas, there were thousands known. This could help explain why Mr. Kelso thinks that they're only worth $5 to $20 per coin. The other thing is, he may have seen Brown's ads. Brown had 2 ads by this point. The one in the one in the 1919 issue and one in the 1920 issue. The 1919 offering $500 and the 1920 was set $600. This is one of 2 articles in Chicago newspapers claiming that William F. Dunham owned a 1913 Liberty Head nickel and was offered $600 on the day of the A&E's annual banquet at the 1920 convention. These articles were brought to my attention by Wayne Hamren, who edits the Asylum, after my first article in 2017 came out, and Wayne had been nice enough to run a portion of my article and a link in the Asylum. A reader of that publication had found the articles. This one, from the Inglewood Economist, was published the day after the banquet. It reads, "Watch for 1913 Liberty Head nickels. Some are worth $600. A 1913 nickel without a buffalo's head on it is worth $600. I was offered that from mine today," said W.F. Dunham, 724 Oakley Boulevard, at the annual dinner of the American Numismatic Association in the Hotel Sherman last night. Unless this is real or some type of prank, I don't know what to make of it. None of the provenances for the 1913 Liberty Head nickel list Dunham as having owned one of the coins. Dunham was the most famous collector of his day. His 1804 dollar, dubbed the Chicago dollars, was on display at the convention, along with his rare 1822 half eagle. He was a prominent and regular attendee of the Chicago Coin Club meetings, and at some point he was A&A president. He wasn't present at the December 3, 1919 meeting when Brown showed his nickel. He was on a tour of the mint that Brown and other A&A members took in 1919. Brown was noted as being at the convention for a short time on Monday, the day before the banquet, but may have stayed overnight. $600 was also the amount that Brown was offering per coin. The 724 Oakley address is also correct. Strange only in that in several years prior to that, Dunham had been robbed at that address. And I wonder why he would put his real address in the newspaper. Here we are at the A&A banquet held in the Grey Room at the Hotel Sherman on August 24th. The arrows point to people related to the 1913 Liberty Head nickel story, with the exception of the blue one at the front that shows that the dinner rolls were still on the table. They hadn't eaten yet. At the yellow arrow is Dunham, the gentleman who said that he had been offered $600 for his coin. Just in front of him is R.E. Davis. He's secretary of the Chicago Coin Club and was at the 1919 meeting. Following Dunham's death in 1941, B. Max Mells sold the Dunham collection. Initially among the offerings were an 1822 half eagle, one of 3 known, and the so-called Dexter specimen of the famed 1804 silver dollar. However, both of these were sold in private transactions prior to the sale. There was no 1913 Liberty Head nickel in this offering. Within a week after the first Chicago newspapers reported that Dunham had been offered $600 for his 1913 nickel, the news quickly spread. I found these blurbs in at least 25 different newspapers, most of which were in very small towns. They generally all read like this: a 1913 nickel without the buffalo's head on it is worth $600. All the rest are worth about 1.5 cents. At about the same time, a Chicago newspaper complained that it was getting flooded with queries about a rare 1913 nickel. Most of these queries no doubt came from owners of 1913 Indian head nickels who thought they had struck it rich. By the early 1930s, newspaper articles and ads often referred to the 1913 Liberty Head nickel. This widely syndicated one from Los Angeles in 1931 offered $50 for the coin. Here's one of my favorite swap ads. It's from 1923 and reads, "One pair, Flemish giant rabbits, or a $5 bill. We'll swap for a 1913 nickel, old type, not buffalo type, in good condition." This is from a gentleman in Mountjoy, Pennsylvania. A picture on the internet shows one of these giant rabbits laying next to a Sheltie dog, and they are the same size. The largest known was more than 4 feet in length. Here's another strange one, taken in trade 1913 Liberty Head nickel, not buffalo, or 1894 dime, S mint mark, for a $60 knitting machine. This is from two people in Jacksonport, Wisconsin, from an ad in 1926. B. Max Mell was easily the most prolific advertiser of 1913 Liberty Head nickels. At the top, you see one from 1925, Old Money Wanted, $50 paid for a 1913 Liberty nickel, not buffalo. We buy all rare coins. Many in circulation, send 4 cents for large illustrated coin folder, may mean big profit to you. Numismatic Company, Department 2, Fort Worth, Texas. I always thought that Mell, who ran these classified ads in newspapers across the United States, had made this ad up particularly for the 1913 nickel, but it turns out that he used an earlier template. The one at the bottom from 1915 reads, "Old coins wanted, $50 paid for 1853 $half, no arrows." And he just would plug in a different rare coin he knew you wouldn't be able to find in circulation, but that he hoped you would then send in the 4 cents and get the coin circular, and then he would have you on his mailing list. This is a Depression era comic ad by Mell. By this point, he's running a lot of ads in newspapers in the comics sections. This one, "The Romance of a Dime" by Sid Hicks, the gentleman in the top panel on the left with the umbrella, is walking along, and the guy in the dark coat is wishing he could had a little bit of money to buy something to eat and maybe get some money later to buy a suit coat so he can find a job. The guy passing with the umbrella passes him a coin. He goes into the lunchroom, and the guy behind the counter feels sorry for him, offers him an extra bowl of soup. He tenders his coin, and the guy behind the counter notices it's an old coin in 1894 as dime and says, "Look here, the Numismatic Company of Texas, Mr. Max Mell, owner. He's the man who will pay $250 for this dime. I know, I've sent him old coins myself. People hand them out without knowing what they are worth." "I'm going to split with you," the guy down on his luck says. "No, you need it. I'll stake you till you get your check from Texas. Mr. Mell will send you your dough by return mail. He's a great guy. I guess every coin collector in the world knows him." And the guy is happy now he can get a new start. Here's the Freddie Olson collection offered by B. Max Mell in 1944. Mell boasted within it that he had spent over $1 million promoting the 1913 Liberty Head nickel, but in the same time he never owned one. He did offer this coin, which sold for $3,750, going to King Farouk of Egypt. There have been several colorful owners and dealers and collectors who have owned the 1913 Liberty Head nickel. One of my favorites is J.V. McDermott of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He was known to not take Bourse table at shows and was said to have carried around the coins in his pocket, not even within holders. This may be some truth to that, in that back in the 1990s, I interviewed Tom Fruit, who was a governor of the Board of Governors of Wisconsin, Numismatist, Wisconsin. And at the time he met McDermott, Fruit was in his early teens and had learned there was a coin dealer in his area, gone over the door to the house of McDermott, knocked on the door, and McDermott opened the door, reached in his pocket, pulled out the 1913 Liberty Head nickel and a scarce colonial coin. Fruit related that McDermott would regularly lend out the nickel and even let him take it to school to have it photographed. McDermott made no bones about the fact he liked to have a few drinks, and when Fruit turned old enough to be able to drive, he would take McDermott to and from meetings. In 1967, Aubrey Beebe purchased McDermott's nickel at auction for a bid of $46,000. Here we have the Olson specimen of the 1913 Liberty Head nickel showing up in a TV show, Hawaii Five-0. This was from a 1973 episode called The $1 Million Nickel, the $100,000 nickel, I'm sorry. As someone else pointed out, actor Victor Bono, shown here holding the coin, is got the magnifying glass on the wrong side for him looking at the coin. Plus, he's looking at the back side of the coin where you can't even tell it's 1913 Liberty Head nickel. This same coin later sold was owned by Reed Hahn and sold for just shy of $1 million in 1993. Before I go into this slide, I did miss a slide earlier, and I'm going to try to recap it right at the moment off of memory. So what was the importance that the next Chicago Coin Club meeting saw the coin before the ads appeared in print? For one thing, it proves that Brown had one of the coins before his ad appeared, and had some relation to getting the coins out of the mint. That was suspected before, but now we have proof that he owned the coin even before the ad went into print. Also, it disproves one of the theories that the ads were just to legitimize his having owned the coins. The theory there was that some of advance is that he put the ads in, and then he came up with the coin later and said, look, I found the coin through my ad, I didn't steal it. Well, the problem with that is you wouldn't have shown the coin at the December 3 meeting before your ads even appeared in print. That would have been ludicrous because it would have blown your smoke screen. It also disproves the fact that the ads were meant for that the ads were meant to juice the market for the coin. He ran a single ad in the December 1919 issue in which he offered $500. Then he bought a quarterly ad buy from January through March 1920, and there he offered $600. But if you're really trying to juice the market, the convention wasn't until late August. Why wouldn't you keep the ads going? The ANA offered 6 months ads, for instance. You could have gone all the way to June. It just makes no sense to stop them. The only reason I can think is for him to have stopped the ads is because he found what he was looking for. Also, it disproves the statute of limitations argument. Several have said that looking at the 1913 year and the 1920, that's 7 years. That's the reason it took so long for the coins to come out, because they were waiting for the statute of limitations to run out on their theft. Well, if you take R.W. Julian saying that the earliest the coinage could have been was December 16th, 1912, and then you look at the December 3, 1919 date, that doesn't make 7 years. If you take that the dies may have existed all the way through 1913, then that doesn't even come close to 7 years. Plus, the coins could have been confiscated no matter what. We saw that most recently with the 1933 double eagle. When my second article ran in the Numismatic News, I had a full-page bio on who was Samuel W. Brown that unfortunately did not make it into the online version of the article. I'm going to try to recap that here, plus some new information I found while preparing this presentation, and a new photo of Brown taken just before the 1920 ANA convention. Samuel W. Brown was born on August 2nd, 1879 in Pennsylvania, to Fannie K. and Solomon D. Brown, a farming family native to Pennsylvania. His father died in 1895 when Brown was in his teens. By the time he was 20 in 1899, Brown was working as a school teacher and still living with his mother. A 1905 obituary notice for his mother, Fannie K. Brown, shows Samuel W. Brown working at the Mint in Philadelphia. She was running Religious Evangelical Association camp meetings on the family's land in Brownstown, Pennsylvania. Samuel Brown took over running the meetings for the next several years. Records obtained by Eric P. Newman from the General Services Administration in the early 1960s show that Brown began working for the Philadelphia Mint on December 18, 1903, with his job title being helper at $2.90 per day. Less than a year later, on September 26, 1904, he was promoted to assistant curator, receiving $1,000 per annum. On February 1, 1907, came another promotion and raise. Now a storekeeper, he was earning $1,200. Still a storekeeper, additional promotion came on March 2nd, 1908, earning $1,400, and on July 1st, 1910, his position was changed from storekeeper to clerk, storekeeper. The records show he resigned his position on November 14, 1913, after almost 10 years at the Mint, but to enter business for himself. What the record doesn't show is that he began planning his departure from the Mint several months earlier. The July 10, 1913 issue of the Buffalo Commercial newspaper records, while Brown was still working at the Philadelphia Mint, that Frontier Chocolate Company of North Tonawanda, New York, had filed incorporation papers with $100,000 in capital stock. Wayne G. Fonstock would serve as president, and another incorporator, Samuel W. Brown of Philadelphia, would be the firm's vice president and secretary. Another news article said that both were experienced in making chocolate, but I don't know if that's true. Frontier began building a large plant in North Tonawanda shortly thereafter and began operations in February 1913. It planned to manufacture cocoa in bulk form and would produce what was called cake chocolate to be sold to candy makers. Frontier was largely successful, but it did suffer some setbacks from World War I, which made it difficult to receive the needed shipments of cocoa beans from Africa and other sources. Its biggest setbacks came shortly after it began producing chocolate. In August 1914, a fire started that caused $70,000 worth of damage. The fire, it was believed, was started on the building's third floor by one of the ovens used to cook the cocoa beans. A more costly fire about 5 months later occurred while Samuel W. Brown was alone in the building. The loss this time was estimated at $130,000 and included hard-to-replace equipment made and sold specifically in Germany. The January 11, 1915 issue of the Buffalo Courier reported that the fire was discovered by Samuel Brown as he was leaving the plant after looking over his morning mail. He found the rear part of the second floor ablaze and sounded the alarm. In a sign of how highly the business was thought of, nearby Niagara Falls and several other towns tried to get the firm to relocate, including one that offered Frontier free land and a break on its taxes. There was even talk of moving the business to Chicago, but in the end, Frontier rebuilt its operations in North Tonawanda. About 5 months after the fire, Brown returned to Philadelphia briefly to marry Caroline Cook. The couple, according to the June 12, 1915 issue of the Philadelphia Evening Public Ledger, would live in North Tonawanda, New York. I believe they had one child, a girl. Years later, following his visit to the Philadelphia Mint in October 1919, an announcement was made in an October 31, 1919 issue of the Buffalo Inquirer that Frontier Chocolate Company had been sold to a Boston firm, Beacon Chocolate Company, but that the present management at Frontier would remain in their positions until the new firm took over. This would be the end of Samuel Brown's chocolate career. He wasn't out of work for long, if at all. Shortly after Brown's second 1913 Liberty Head nickel ad appeared in the Numismatist, the January 17, 1920 Buffalo Inquirer recorded that W.B. Pierce, who had been superintendent of the Buffalo Bolt Company for the prior 10 years, was joining with S.W. Brown, Secretary and Treasurer of the Frontier Chocolate Company, in forming Pierce Brown Incorporated. The company by then had closed the deal on 10 acres of land and was planning on large factory buildings. Brown would be Secretary-Treasurer of the new firm, though he's later listed as its president. The firm made metal castings and machinery. In April 1920, 4 months before the 1920 ANA convention in Chicago, where Brown left his nickel on display, a railway strike threatened to halt all shipments of goods, including those of Pierce Brown, to market. Thus, local businessmen, even the police commissioner, took over the positions of striking rail workers, as shown in this photograph I just found on the front page of the April 15, 1920 issue of the Buffalo Evening News. In the blow-up on the right, that's Brown. In the full picture on the left, the man in the foreground leaning over next to the number 3, that's W.B. Pierce, Brown's associate in Pierce Brown Incorporated. Brown retired in 1924 while still in his 40s, but was active in political and civic circles for years later. Here's his World War I registration card from September 12, 1918. If this is a better picture, you could see he signed it at the bottom, Samuel Walter Brown. At the time of this card, he was working at Frontier Chocolate Company and was married to Carrie Brown. And I started looking into this, into the gap between, when I was looking at the gap between 1913 and 1919 and whether or not World War I could have played a role in when the 1913 liquors came out of the market. Brown was too old to have served in World War I. It is possible someone else in the mint did. I don't know. Another possible delay for the coins coming onto the market was the fact that the 1918 ANA convention, which was to have been in Philadelphia, was canceled at the last second. Even the editor of the Numismatist was caught off guard by that. He wrote in one issue that the 1918 convention was already in progress and he would have a full report in the publication's next issue. But by the next issue, he had to eat his words, as the flu pandemic had reached the East Coast and the convention was canceled. It's interesting to speculate what would have happened if the October 1918 convention in Philadelphia had gone on, would Brown have shown up then and still been involved in getting the nickel out of the mint? One thing that definitely would have changed was that the Chicago would have been out of the picture as the first to see the nickel, as the Chicago Coin Club was informed until February 1919. As it was, the convention was canceled for October 1918 and slid to October 19th in Philadelphia, and we have what we have. Samuel W. Brown joined the ANA in 1906. He was member number 808. He shows up at the 1906 convention while still working for the Philadelphia Mint. He shows up at the 1919 convention in Philadelphia while employed by Frontier Chocolate Company. And then he shows up in the 1920 convention while he's with Pierce Brown Incorporated. Those are the only conventions we know that he was at. Like I said, he retired in 1924, but here you see him in 1924. He was served on the Assay Commission. He was also named to the 1925 Commission. The U.S. Assay Commission judged the quality of the nation's coinage each year, and it was largely a ceremonial appointment. If you had good political connections, which Brown did, you could be a member of the committee. The Assay Commission was ended in 1980 by President Jimmy Carter. Much of Brown's later life is as a model citizen. He was mayor of North Tonawanda, New York for several terms, member of the Board of Education there for 10 years, also active in the Freemasons and a past master. According to the obituary in the Numismatist, he died on June 17, 1944, after a lengthy illness at the age of 64. That's my presentation. Thank you for listening.
All righty, thank you very much. So now we are going to have a Q&A here at the end. So Robert, if I can have you go ahead and stop your screen share. There should be a little red button at the top of your screen that says stop share.
There we go.
This? Okay, there we go. Okay, so audience members, if you have any questions for the Q&A, just click on that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, type them, send them in. In the meantime, it looks like we have one in here already. So what inspired you to begin conducting this research?
I had found the picture of Brown standing on the steps of the Philadelphia Mint in 1919, and I thought that was strange by itself. Then I was looking to the old Numismatist and realized that the dates were so close. He had, for the ad deadline from the Philadelphia Convention was in in October 1919, and the dates for when the ad first appeared between early October and November when he had to have his ad in were so close that it seemed suspicious to me.
Alrighty. What's been the most surprising thing to you that you found?
Well, I get excited by finding anything new on it because with all the years that people have written about these coins, it's hard to think you'll find of anything. And the other day when I found the picture of Brown at the railway strike, I was kind of happy about that. The most exciting was finding the listing of the 1913 meeting, or the 1919 meeting where the Chicago Coin Clubs showed the coin. I remember when I was going through every single one, and I'm a former member of coin clubs, a lot of different coin clubs. But if you can imagine trying to look through all those club listings, it gets pretty tedious after a while. So when I came to that particular one, I was really shocked first to see that Brown was there at the meeting, and that nobody had ever reported that before. And then on that same page, it says that he was, he became a member that night. Well, then when you turn to the next page, and you get to a list of about 12 or 14 different exhibits, at the almost the very end is S.W. Brown with this nickel. And I thought, how could no one have missed this? I took the publication over to another guy I was working with, and I said, that's the 13-millimeter nickel, isn't it? And he goes, yeah, that's it. And I said, well, for some reason, people have missed it all these years.
Wow. In your opinion, why are the 1913 Liberty nickels not treated similarly to the 1933 double eagle?
I have no idea. Most writers say that they still could be confiscated by the government if the government chose to move in. I don't really know.
Alrighty. Well, that was the last one in the Q&A for now. I'm going to give our little closing spiel. So go ahead and get those questions in quickly if you have any more. Oh, yep, they beat me to it. Let's see. Oh, that is the same question as the 1913 and the 33 double eagle. A lot of curiosity about that one, apparently. Just phrased differently.
There are some people who say that the 33 double eagle isn't even really illegal and should be allowed out. I don't really know. I haven't studied that one.
Alrighty. So as I said, type quickly if you have more questions. Otherwise, Robert, thank you very much for taking the time out to talk to us. It was a very interesting presentation with a lot of interesting little tidbits there that I'm sure we'll all take away with us. And thank you to everyone for watching. We, of course, appreciate your participation. Without you, there would be no point in having the symposium. So let's see, next hour, we have a presentation from David Lang, who will be talking about the Whitman Blue coin folders as collectibles. So be sure to tune into that one if you are interested. Otherwise, I believe that will wrap us up. I hope to see you all back at some of our presentations throughout the rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.